Hello and welcome to an introduction, I think, to our summer season of crime studies, little interviews, I guess, on YouTube. My name is Rosie White. I'm on the steering committee of the Crime Studies Network, as is my friend and colleague, Dr. Jacky Collins, former colleague, I should say. I'm a senior lecturer at Northumbria University, and Jacky used to work there, but now works at Stirling University. And you may know her better as Dr. Noir, which we're going to talk about at some point. But I thought this introduction would be a really good way of talking about the work that you've done, which has been going on for a good while now. So I got a little bit involved with your Newcastle Noir events, which happened every spring until, of course, recent years. And we'll talk about how that moved online. But I wondered if you could talk about how Newcastle Noir as an event started. When did it start, and how did you get it going, and how did it work, really?
Yeah, looking back, it was 7 years old this year, despite COVID and everything. And it's, out of really small, humble beginnings. And I think, for anybody, who's watching this, who is in academia, that when those moments happen, when you are encouraged to change course, shall we say, or when circumstances mean that you can't really carry on doing what you were doing because there's a reshuffle or things, things.
Restructuring, I think we call it.
You want to use that dirty word, but yes, you've said it. You've said it. You are correct. And that gave me the opportunity to begin to refocus about the kind of research that I wanted to do, but that, as we always say to our students, the kind of research where it's a subject that you're passionate about. And crime fiction, especially European crime fiction, I've always had, a huge appetite for those kinds of texts. I mean, written texts, and also the TV dramas and films.
So is that partly because of your own kind of university background? Because you're, let's say, multilingual,
It
You
is.
speak in several tongues.
I do. So having done Scandinavian studies in that initial degree, and then moved into Hispanic studies, and I think the other strand is my first area of research, which was looking at Hispanic lesbian studies, or representations in Hispanic culture. And one of the key literary strands, and I think the same can be said for English literature, American literature, contemporary writing, is that, lesbian literature and crime fiction, where the outsider is the insider because they're on the side of the law and things. So it was almost like it seemed like an inevitable path to come into this. So changed departments, changed focus. And I had started to go to some of the big crime fiction festivals, so Bloody Scotland, Crime Fest in Bristol, and it started to make me think, wouldn't it be brilliant? I know there's Harrogate, and that's just enormous.
That's massive, isn't it? Is
That's
that the biggest British
yeah,
festival?
definitely, yeah. But it was a bit like, what I soon found out, that in order to go there, any of these festivals, in order to go, in order to stay, in order to attend, you needed a reasonable amount of money to do this. And it made me think about, thinking about the Northeast, and that, I think it's not a secret that the Northeast is not the wealthiest of areas in Britain, and wanting to bring crime writers to the Northeast so that people didn't have to travel and pay for accommodation. Sort of like a bit more like open access. Yeah. And another one of the strands is that I'd really got into this emerging Icelandic crime fiction. And one of the authors whose work was just coming out was now best-selling, crime writer Ilsa Sigurdardottir. And I wrote to her and explained what I was wanting to do. And she just said, I would love to do that. I was gobsmacked, like, really? Okay. She said, you just let me know when, where, and how, and we'll do that.
Wow.
So at the time, at work, there was the possibility of applying for some funding. But that first time round, it didn't come about. And I had to write back to Ilse and say, I am so sorry. It's just not going to work. And she said, don't worry. She said, these things happen when you can. I promise you, I will be there. A year later, I went to Iceland Noir, and Anne Cleves, it was just so lovely. She said, there's somebody I think you want to meet. And she took me into the green room. She said, here's and it was wonderful. And we sort of like cemented a bond. And the following year, that is when it really began. And
so Iceland Noir preceded Newcastle Noir.
It did. That was 2013. And then 2014, we held at Newcastle's Lytton Phil Library, what we called it Crime Saturday. We had 3 panels, one of those being Icelandic crime fiction, 3 panels, 9 authors, and it was just a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
And again, for that event, there was funding there from the institution, which really, made that possible.
Yeah. So you do need maybe not loads of money, but you need a pot of money in a sense to kind of get something like that up and going.
You do indeed. I think it's interesting. I've just been working with the new Welsh International Crime Fiction Festival. So a year ago, I started talking with the organisers about that, and they've just been able to hold that weekend online. But next year they want to hold that in Aberystwyth, in real life, in person.
Yeah.
And from the outset, saying, okay, there needs to be funding. Because however you wish to do it, whether you wish to cover authors' travel and accommodation costs, do you want to pay them a fee? What is it that you were wanting to do? And I know when I set out, I didn't really understand. I was just so keen to bring authors. I think with hindsight, I understand so much more. But authors have always been extremely kind and generous to Newcastle Noir. What we do is we usually, we don't do travel and accommodation. We pay a flat fee.
Right.
And many authors will say, well, just put that back in the pot.
That's so good.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I suppose one thing is now, in most forms of fiction, and particularly perhaps detective fiction, crime fiction, there's an onus on authors to go out and sell their work, isn't there? But there's a kind of circuit, and I think a lot of the crime fiction festivals have become part of that kind of writer's circuit.
Yeah, without a doubt. Because I know it to be true. I mean, from personal experience, but that idea, if you get a chance to meet an author, I think you're far more likely to think, oh, I want to buy their book. It was lovely to hear them speak. They were so whatever, or they were so interesting, they were so kind, they were so funny. I'll buy their book. I mean, so I think that is a definite aspect to that. I also think as well, rightly, wrongly, there are so many novels, crime novels published. I mean, there's a vast sea.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's the great thing in a way, because, we're not all going to like the same subgenre within crime fiction. Why would we? But I think in order for your author voice to be heard, I think you do need to get out there. I found that very interesting at the start of lockdown last year. A number of big named authors saying, my sales have plummeted. I don't know what to do.
Ooh.
Because I'm not getting out there. Now hopefully, 15 months forward, hopefully, because there've been, so many wonderful online festivals, sessions, people are still able to engage with their favorite authors, find some new authors, because I think that, again, it's another aspect of crime fiction that I'd love to interrogate in more detail. Do we as readers stick with the authors we know because we like them, the cozy slipper, or do we take a chance and engage with another author whose work we've never been familiar with, or it might be a new author? And I wonder, in these COVID times, from the comfort and reasonable safety of our own homes, we've been able to maybe meet new authors that we might not have gone along to an event at a local library if it had been a debut author. I don't know them or not. Yeah.
I think that's very true. I mean, the thing that because I've chaired some of the panels in Newcastle Noir.
Mm,
You've kindly asked me to do
yeah.
it, and I've always really enjoyed it.
And thank you.
It's been
Thank you for
huge
doing
fun.
that.
But the thing that fascinates me is either chairing a panel or sitting in on one of the other panels during the festival. There's such a sense of excitement in the room, and you can see that people are just so absorbed by what the writer. So you might not have heard of this writer or know anything about them, but they come along, they introduce themselves, they introduce their work, and suddenly you think, oh, that
Mm,
really sounds,
yeah.
and it's. I think you set that up really well because you had a bookstore in the outer room,
Yeah.
and I think did you have a second-hand bookstore as well?
In the Lytton Phil, they had second-hand possibility,
Right.
and then when we moved to the city library, of course, there's the opportunity to borrow from the
Yeah.
library as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But I think having a bookstore there, and Forum Books, in particular, and if we can just give a shout out for their new premises out at Whitley Bay, which is wonderful. Again, I think it's linking those parts that make up the world of crime fiction. So you have the authors and the readers, and then you put in the possibility of, I've heard an author speak, I really want to buy the book. Oh, and look, and they're here to sign it as well.
Yeah.
So it's a complete experience in a way. It's not just reading the text, and it's not just listening to the author. Yeah, it is a bit of an adventure.
It's a real adventure, and it's really interesting to hear writers talking about their work,
Mm.
and it is work,
Mm.
and how they do it differently.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, you had some fantastic people on panels. I remember one panel that I chaired. I think it had a couple of the writers from The Killing. Is it The
That's
Killing or
right.
The Bridge? And that was at a moment when those shows were just really peaking, and I thought, what a coup! But I can imagine the process of getting those panels in place and organising the writers and the venue, and you have volunteers helping with the kind of
Yeah,
sound and stuff like that.
yeah.
I mean, that is quite a logistical nightmare. So when you moved online, as you had to in 2020, did that make life easier or harder?
Ooh. At the time, it was a massive, massive challenge.
Yeah,
You know,
because we were all learning at
exactly,
great
exactly,
speed.
exactly. And I'll make a confession here for the world to know that I was one of those, shall we say, more senior members of staff who always resisted Blackboard, Panopto, all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
For me, and especially teaching languages, it was, I want you in the room. I don't want to do this via a screen. I need you.
yeah.
Mm.
Likewise, we're not digital natives, Jacky.
No, but needs must
Yeah,
when the situation arises. And so it's been a massive, massive learning curve. I think we were one of the first, if not the first, festival to do something online. But I wasn't brave enough to do it live because I'd never done it before. I didn't know how you would
right.
manage an
Yeah,
audience. I didn't know about Eventbrite ticketing. I didn't know anything about that. But what I did know was I knew that I could do a Zoom session like this because I'd been doing it with the book club at Newcastle City Library, the
Right.
European Crime
Oh,
Fiction
right.
Book
Yeah.
Club. So I knew this would work, and I'd understood a little bit about recording. But a former student from Northumbria, a film studies student, who'd helped with the live festival in 2019, he said, if you record, he said, I can do you an intro and closing credits, and we can put the festival like that upon Newcastle Noir's YouTube channel, which was already in place from the festival the year before. So again, it was a massive learning curve to do that. And what I tried to do was as many, and I did it in two weekends in May, and to do as many of the panels that would have been on at the festival. You know, because people had even bought tickets and things like that. So I mean, and the City Library was great. They returned people's money and everything. So that wasn't a problem. But it's like people have,
So could people watch for free, or were you? Yeah.
they
So
watched
I mean,
they watched for free, and I mean, and those panels are still up there. You know, people can still, you know, watch those.
I mean, this is the interesting thing for me, because I know myself from like academic sort of conferences and seminars. It's opened my eyes as to what's possible, and I don't think it's obviously not the same as a live event or being in the same space as a speaker or, you know, a group of writers or whatever. But it's access. I mean, it gives you a kind of access
Yeah.
to international writers or speakers
Very much so. And
in a
the other
really
thing,
different way.
the other thing that struck me was the number of people who were writing, because I've been doing other online events as well in a different guise, for book launches and things like that. And the number of people, from abroad, who write and say, well, we would never have been able to come to something like that.
Yeah.
But also people in the UK, and even in a local area, who say, well, you know, to get out of an evening isn't possible for me for one reason or another, or
Mhm.
you know, to make that journey or various responsibilities. I couldn't do that. But lockdown, COVID has meant that I have been able to attend things that previously,
Yeah.
which again, that is no bad thing, is it? And I think going forward, you know, the universe, whoever willing, that we come out of COVID, I don't think we can ever do festivals in the same way again. You
I
know,
think it's changed things, and not
mm,
just for the worse, but I think it's changed things in that it's made people like us, you know, actually discover what the technology can do
yeah,
within reason, you
yeah,
know, given, you know, support and a good connection.
yeah, totally. Totally. I think, you
So,
know, again, as this year's gone on, and being involved with a number of festivals and things like that, and having, you know, a festival organizer will say, okay, we need to have a sound check. You know, we need to, what does it look like? And I'm doing a panel at iWrite in Glasgow. Well, not in Glasgow, but it should be, you know,
yeah.
at the end of the month. And talking to the organizer, Bob McDevitt, and he says, can you do a sound check and a visuals check? And I said, well, I could, but I'm not actually where I'm going to be doing that right now. He went, well, forget it. You know, we'll wait until you can, because you know. So I think that is one of the big, I mean, technical aspects are always part of a festival, whether they're in real life or not, but they come even more to the fore, I think.
So are you doing it live this year, or have you done it? When is Newcastle Noir?
We decided that this year, because there have been so many amazing festivals online, and again, the question is, where are we at with
Mm,
Zoom screen fatigue? You know, thinking of,
yeah.
you know, anybody whose profession has meant that they work online and there's no respite from the screen, to then say, and for your leisure, come back to the screen. So that, you know, I myself and you know, the people that form the Newcastle Noir team, we've wondered is, should we just hang fire? Okay, there's plenty for people to watch. You know, we don't need to organize another festival for now. What we'd rather do is wait until we can maybe do, and of course it's going to be a much smaller event to start with. And I don't think that I'm expecting anybody to travel too far.
Yeah.
I don't envisage, again, physically bringing anybody from outside the UK, because that, I think at the moment, well, the cost of that, even
But
more
it's,
so.
yeah, but it's also, I mean, we're still in a situation where things are fairly uncertain, even though the UK is in a very privileged position regarding vaccines and
Indeed,
stuff.
indeed, indeed.
So it's really complex.
So I don't know.
But you've got the doctor is in kind of
Yeah, and
continuing.
that
How long
and
has that been going on? Because
it's
this is
been,
what we're leading up to.
it is
Is
really, isn't
sort
it?
of,
I'm having a wonderful
previewing
discussion, but
your
the
summer
reason,
season.
yeah, well, it began as soon as we'd finished with the last year, the May festival weekends, and of course we couldn't do everyone, and so I wanted to ensure that every author who had been down on the program list and who wanted to do this kind of event had the opportunity to do so. Now, organizing a panel so that all authors are free and it works, and can be tricky. So I thought, again, control freak within the doctor says the simplest thing to do is actually bring in an individual and talk to an individual. So rather than it being an hour-long session with 3 authors, no, it's usually about half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a bit more generous than a doctor's consultation time, but hey,
But that's quite a good length, because that's sort of a podcast length, isn't it?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think a half an hour, to me, I mean, a lot of academic seminars are at least an hour and a half, and that's quite a commitment
it
to an
is.
evening,
It is.
say,
It
or
is.
late afternoon. Whereas half an hour, that could be a lunch break,
Exactly. Lunch break. I have a friend who she listens when she goes out on her bicycle. It's
Yeah.
I I think it's been it's been a way of remaining connected with the crime fiction world. It's allowed authors to have a platform. I don't know. I mean, it in no way can it replace being face to face with someone. But I think it really serves to be able to hear about, and it's especially, I've tried to do it when an author's got a new book coming out, so that it's almost like past, present, future with them. As a doctor would, tell me about your history first time you're going to,
So
let me look
it's
at,
like a consulting room.
It is, let's look at your ailments. What have you come in with? Or so also, 6 books in a series, 5 standalones. Where are you with that? How did you come into this? All that kind of thing. So in a sense, it's if it's an author that well, you might have heard some of those stories, but I do try to bring other things out. I am aware that there are some standard questions, and certain people say, oh yeah, authors aren't going to tell us anything new, and I think that's why I try and
That, you see, that's so interesting, because that's not my experience at all. Going to the Newcastle Noir or other kind of literary festivals, it's always different. And I'm always surprised, actually, by what authors say, even when they're very well known or very prolific. But I think the questions are important. So
yeah, I think so, and I think, given the perspective that you and I maybe approach a text from as well, the idea of bringing out maybe some of those bigger questions, can we call them? Excuse me. Recently, I had talking to an author who in her work, and she did it exceptionally well because there was no description, but that one of the storylines is all about abuse. And and saying to her, how did you feel about approaching this topic and making that decision to not be descriptive, and is this not a difficult topic to talk about? around the Me Too and all sorts of things like that. So I think there's different ways that you can approach an author's writing and also approach the author.
Yeah.
Given as we move through time, initially I was asking authors of all your characters, because it was in lockdown, that first lockdown, of all the characters you'd created, who would you want to be locked down with and why? Yeah.
Presumably not the murderer.
Presumably not. Presumably not. And I loved it how some people were saying, would I have to get rid of my partner out of the house? Can I? It's like, this is just imaginary. It's not real. And the other thing, and one of those other questions that I think is, it is fascinating, is especially with debut authors, what enabled them to bring that book into being? Okay. And I think for every author there's a story. So it's never going to be word for word. Once you've heard one, you've heard them all.
Not at all.
Yeah, and there was one.
I think that's borne out by the Newcastle Noir panels, actually, because you do have quite a lot of young or new writers on those panels.
Yeah.
And even the more experienced writers, are often happy to talk about how they got into it. And it's always different.
It is.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. It's lovely. This is great. It's so nice to be in conversation about these things. It's one of the things that I'm keen to do as well, is give that space to people that are just setting out on their journey. It's a bit like being on the nursery slopes or things like that. Just there are other wonderful, excellent, amazing festivals, podcasts, sessions, but I feel an affinity with people just setting out on a journey.
I think the thing that I noticed as well in the on-site real life sort of panels was how scared some of the authors were.
Yeah.
And I mean, because I didn't have an investment, I was just chairing or in the audience or whatever, and that was kind of fascinating to me, because I think, you've written a book, what a fantastic thing, and now you're nervous about talking about it with people who are keen to read it or have read it, and you just think, oh,
yeah,
but it's real. I mean, a lot of particularly new authors are really nervous about the panels.
That's right. And even doing it online.
Oh, right.
So last week, an author who'd not done a session like this, and we had a pre-meet, and she was so just imagine it's you and I, all right? We're in a room. There's no one else. You are telling me about something that matters so much to you. I am not going to ask you anything you don't know about. You did write the book, didn't you? It's not, it's not been ghostwritten and you're just like, what have I written? And I'm going to ask you about you, and you're coming to this point. So there's no trick questions. There's nothing, it's just an open space for you to be, and you to tell us, about this amazing creation.
I know. It's a great forum, I think.
And how about this one at the Welsh Festival? So I had 3 authors, an extremely established author. I mean, extremely established. Somebody who is more than a rising star now, has established themselves as well in the last few years. And then somebody who is, who's been writing for a while, but their work is just getting recognized now. So how do you conduct a panel so that the person whose name is known all over the world gets their just respect? How the person who is that person who's written for a while but hasn't really been heard about much also gets their moment to speak and talk. I mean, it reminds me a little bit like mixed ability teaching.
Well, fortunately, you've got the experience,
But it's vital, is it not, that just because and it's not the only panel that I've had like that recently. Just because you are a million times whatever selling author, and I respect you for that. But here's somebody who also writes well, and I want I want them to be able, and usually, and this is the wonderful thing, usually those authors, they engage together. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there's no, you know, it's very rare that there's an ego or anything like that. And they just connect well, and they, you know, and that is the magic.
I think the best panels that I've seen or been chairing are the ones where it ends up with the authors talking to each other.
Bingo.
That
That's the
they
magic.
actually, you know, the questions sort of spark off a conversation that goes off in different directions, and they start chipping in with sort of their own experience, and that's when it really takes off. And you can see that the audience are really kind of just mesmerized that this is, you know, you can't, well, you can buy it, I suppose, because you pay for a ticket, but it's just, you know, it's really magical, I think, when that happens. It's kind of, I mean, you know, in academic work, it reminds me of a seminar, you know, where suddenly the discussion hits a new level and it takes off and everybody's on it, you know, and it's that moment, and that's the moment you live for.
Exactly.
You're not trying to extract information.
No.
You're actually just sitting back and watching it take off.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That is the moment of yeah.
So coming back to The Doctor Is In, what can we look forward to over the summer? What kind of treats have you got in store?
Okay,
Can you divulge any of
can.
it?
I can.
Okay.
As ever, I have a mix. So the next author that will appear this week is Jo Spain, so Irish author, with her series, but we're talking about the latest standalone, which is called The Perfect Lie. And why I am so keen to be in conversation with Jo is because she's also a script writer for crime dramas. So she covers all the bases for me with
what has she worked on? What kind of crime dramas has she worked on?
This is what I'm wanting to pick. I've heard that she does.
Okay.
So it's like, let's open the doors and see what it is. And because I know she works, and I want to know how she does this, because I know she works on European crime dramas.
Oh, right.
So I want to know, does she get the script in does she have to provide it in English and then it's translated? What's the process in that, as well as celebrating this latest novel as well? Then we've got two well-known authors, William Shaw and Sarah Hillary, are going to be with us. But then we've got some new, some emerging authors, Danny Marshall, whose debut novel has just been released, Anthrax Island, and it's a corker. And then I'm also wanting to bring in some people from outside the British Isles. So I've got Ray Cairns from Australia.
Gosh.
And Helena Flood, who is a debut author from Norway.
It's truly global.
Yeah, it really is. I've got some other. I've got a New Zealand author that I want to bring in as well, and a New Zealand author who is Swedish but who lives in New Zealand. So so just trying to bring that global perspective. And there's a Newcastle Noir summer special as well online. We were saying, and it's three authors. I think it's a German, a Dane, and a Swede. 3 guys.
That's very Newcastle Noir,
isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what I thought. If we can do a panel like that, then we're still putting out the ethos that Newcastle Noir goes with, and hopefully we can be back live in November with something small, along with the Newcastle Book Festival, the Winter Book Festival, and do a mini Newcastle Noir, and maybe some like special events around the area which are small, with maybe one author and things like that. But in the meantime, wanting to keep this, the Doctor Will See You Now, because again, it's that idea of bringing that range of authors, hearing what they've got to say, and you know, getting to the nitty gritty
I like
of their
that.
texts.
I
You
like
know?
the nitty gritty. On that note, Jacky, shall we just finish here? And can I say thank you to you, Dr. Noir, for
Pleasure,
this
a pleasure.
sort of conversation, but also for the sessions that we're looking forward to over the summer on the Crime Studies Network site. So thank you for joining us for this.
A total pleasure. I really hope that, that people can be stimulated in their research, people can be stimulated in their planning if they're thinking of, putting on events or sessions themselves, that these little mini half an hours will just provide food for thought or inspiration to go on with
Or
things.
possible summer reading,
Indeed, yeah, yeah. Who says that those who research and lecture on these things shouldn't also have some pleasure?
Indeed, yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds good. Pleasure.
yeah.
Thanks a lot, Jacky. Lovely to talk to you.
Very welcome. Thank you, Rosie. Goodbye for now.
Bye bye.
Bye.